of Meet the Opposition, Nancy Charles. Ms. Charles, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Andre. Good morning, listeners. Good morning, St. Lucia. How are you doing this morning, Andre?
I'm very well. How are you?
I can see that. I'm doing well.
How was the drive?
The drive
from the
up
south?
was a little bit better. A few patches on the road. So you can take a few more risks in driving up, but it was okay. So, and I'm here. I'm very grateful to be here this morning.
Nice
I'm
to see
also
you.
very grateful to our listeners who are tuned in this morning. Andre, on to Meet the Opposition. So, before we start off, we always try to start with a little bit of inspiration. And I know we've been having some challenges with Facebook, apparently, with our songs. So until we sort that out, I thought this morning maybe I would start up with a little. It's a beautiful song. Actually, it's a song that I would have asked to be played this morning. But perhaps I can read just the first paragraph in terms of the words of the song.
Sure.
And then we can have it. It says the title of the song is that God will work it out, and I love that song because of the inspiration it brings in terms of whatever it is that you're going through. It says that God is going to work it out, and the first verse of the song it says, "Before I knew my name, before I even drew a breath, He was making ways for me. Now and every day, in each and every step, He is making ways for me. When my life was full of doubt and it feels like faith is running out, I have come too far to turn around. I know God will work it out. God will work it out. One thing I know, one thing I've found, God will work it out." And Andre, I think this is so true for me and perhaps for a lot of other St. Lucians. But persons who perhaps have not experienced it, and persons maybe if you're going for a little bit of a challenge and a little difficulty this morning, remember, and I think it is the prophet Jeremiah who said that even before I knew thee, before I formed thee, I knew thee. And so for those of us who believe, I want to remind you this morning that before you were formed, even in your mother's womb, in your parents' womb, God knew you. He knew everything about you. He knew your yesterday, He knew your today, but most importantly, He knows what is going to happen tomorrow. And so if you perhaps struggling with faith, you have a little bit of fear of what is going to happen tomorrow, and we all do. We're human. It's sometimes you're not too sure, you're anxious. It doesn't matter what you're anxious about. Sometimes students are anxious about their exams tomorrow. Andrew, I'm sure you know some children who go through classwork, they get 100%. Mm-hmm. When it comes to exam time, because of the nerves and the fear, sometimes they don't do so well. Even in our lives, maybe you're not too sure what is going to happen tomorrow. You're going for a job interview, or perhaps the boss calls you in for a meeting tomorrow or something, whatever it is, and you're perhaps running out on a little bit of faith. I want to remind you this morning that no matter what it is, before you were formed, God knew you, and each and every step that you take in your life, He's watching over you. Good and bad as well. You know, He is there. He's watching. He's biding His time. And there's one thing I know sometimes that keeps me going, Andre, is that it says, it can't keep raining forever. The rain must stop and the sun must come out. The storms, we go through hurricanes and storms in this country. And the hurricane doesn't last forever. It can sit still over the island for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, but it must go away. And that is it with life and challenges and difficulties. They will come, but they must go away. They will blow over. So if you have a little bit of patience, a little bit of faith, and believe that God is going to work it out. So that's my words of inspiration to St. Lucia and St. Lucians. Those of you listening this morning, have a little faith that God is going to work it out.
Alrighty.
All right. So, Meet the Opposition, again, perhaps just to clarify, we may have some new listeners, Andre. I'm told that the show is making waves all over the island and in the diaspora as well. Mm-hmm. People are listening in, and I'm very grateful that persons have an opportunity perhaps to hear from the opposition in a different way, in a different manner, Of course, when you're on the platform, there's one type of messaging, but when you're in studio, you're able to sit down and explain certain issues and certain positions. And that is what Rev-Up SLU 97.1 has given to the United Workers' Party. An opportunity for us to be able to sit down and to discuss the issues in a manner perhaps that we don't have the opportunity to at other platforms. So Meet the Opposition is an opportunity for the United Workers' Party to come in and to speak to what the concerns and the issues are. And persons, I know I have gotten a few calls as well to say, is that a UWP radio station? No, it's not. It is a radio station owned by Andre Paul and Tony Paul, and I think their son. What's your son's name, Andre?
Asani.
So it is the three brothers who owns the radio station, and they have afforded the United Workers' Party a spot on the radio station to be able to iron out our issues. I'm sure the opportunity would be available or will be available to other political parties as well. Right, Andre?
Yeah, just a slight correction. Hassan is my son.
Oh, he's your son.
He's not my brother.
Two brothers and a son.
He could be my brother, actually.
They grow up so fast.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So, St. Lucia and St. Lucians, we have agreed in shows past, and we want to continue to agree that the show will be respectful, that we respect everybody's opinion. I'm not expecting perhaps when we open the lines that everybody is going to agree with our position. Feel free to disagree, but in a respectful manner. If you are going to be disrespectful, if you are going to call and make accusations, call people names, we will cut you off. We will not tolerate it. We will not allow it. We will allow for you to call and have a wonderful discourse. You will say why you disagree and what your position is, and we can agree to disagree. That's what it is about in St. Lucia. We want to bring a level of respect and a level of level-headed discussion into the politics of St. Lucia, Andre. I think we can all agree that over the last couple of years, it's taken a turn where people do not want to respect each other's opinion. Everybody in St. Lucia cannot be supporters of the United Workers' Party. And everybody in St. Lucia cannot be supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party. And everybody in St. Lucia cannot be independent or whatever it is. Everybody must take a side. It's just like with religion. Some people are Catholics and Pentecostals and SDAs, etc. And it's also with life, you have the issues. Sometimes people are pro-choice and, they for abortion, they're against people. All kinds of issues. There's always sometimes two sides, three sides, etc. What we need to learn to do is to respect each other's opinion, is to respect persons for who they are as well. I think, Andre, something I find that is happening in our society a lot is that there is too much discrimination / victimization of people because of their opinions. Everybody, the Constitution of St. Lucia gives us that right to affiliate with any organization of choice, whether it be religious, whether it be political, whether it be community activist, whatever it is, the Constitution of St. Lucia gives us that right to be able to affiliate, and nobody should take away that right from us in terms of affiliation. And we should not tolerate or allow anybody to intimidate us to a certain extent that we feel we cannot express that opinion and that right that we have. And I think to a certain extent it's happening all too often. It's been happening for a while now. It's nothing new. But I think over the years it's getting to be a bit more prevalent in our society. People are being victimized, especially when it comes to the daily living, for their personal opinion. It's not right. It is not good. And so I'm saying...
You're speaking about victimization within the political sphere?
Within the political sphere, and also sometimes within person's personal sphere as well, because people are not only victimized because of politics. Obviously, I'm here because of a political organization and we're talking about politics. But you see people are being discriminated or victimized because of the way they look, maybe because of their family history, their family background. People are being victimized maybe because of their personal positions on certain issues that are happening and so forth. So it's not right and it's not fair. I think everyone should have an opinion, and everyone is entitled to have an opinion. And at the end of the day, it's what we're here, it's what our country affords us. So
let me ask you a question. In fact, I'm glad you're here so I can ask you that question and get an honest answer. We all know in the political sphere that there are certain people who are appointed by a political party / government, right? And then when there's a change in government, these people lose their jobs, and you hear, well, it was a political appointment. So what is your take on that? Is this...
Well, there's a difference. There's a difference of political appointment, and if we're talking about given positions within the public service structure, there's political appointments and there's appointments made by politicians because of your political affiliation. So when we were in government, my position was a political appointment. So the attaché to the Prime Minister, for example, that's a political appointment. So if Philip J. Pierre currently, who's the Prime Minister, has an attaché to the Prime Minister, that's your personal assistant, your personal person that you've brought in. When you're no longer Prime Minister, that person goes with you. So they lose their job in that regard. And persons like that are on contract. You're not a permanent employee.
So this position would not be if the person, well, when that person loses their job,
the position remains, but the person in the position lives with the Prime Minister. So when the new Prime Minister comes in, the new Prime Minister appoints his own attaché, because you would understand an attaché is a personal assistant to you, ensures that you're at all your meetings and there's certain things. So that's a personal position.
Right. So when that
these
happens,
are what we call political appointees.
Right. So when that happens, is that also considered victimization?
No. It's not victimization. So as I was saying, as soon as we lost the election, there was no need for me to even consider remaining, because my appointment was a political appointment. So obviously I would have resigned, or my contract would have been prematurely, if it was not ended as yet, terminated, etc. And so I wouldn't go to the courts and go to my lawyer and say, oh, they should not have terminated my contract or ended my contract. And I would not serve in the Philip J. Pierre cabinet. So that is accepted. However, what you find is that there are certain positions within the structure of the public service. These are permanent positions, and persons who are already within the public service that would need to be promoted to those positions. And when those promotions are supposed to happen, too many times, I think, and it's happened by both parties. I'm not making any excuses for anyone. It happens by both parties. I think that too many times persons are appointed to those positions by politicians because of these people's political affiliations. Now, to a certain extent, there's not too much wrong with it sometimes, except for the fact, Andre, what you find is that a lot of people are not able to, when you're in a job and in a position, you're working for the state now. I'm not working for Philip J. Pierre or Alan Chasney. I'm working for the state. People are not able to divest themselves from the politics and the country. And so a lot of times the decisions that they are supposed to advise on, or decisions to be made when you're in those positions in government, it's supposed to be in the interest of the country or in the interest of the state. And many times they do not make those decisions in the interest of the state. They make it in the interest of the politics of the political party. So because there are many times that a state decision and a political decision will conflict. There will be a clash. The politician may say, this is what is best for our politics, but the state may say, this is what is best for the country, and you have a clash. And a decision has to be made. Which one is it going to be? So I'll give you a typical example. I'll just go to St. Jude's. You have a new government coming in, you have an 80-year-old structure that needs to be renovated, and you have a new building that is there that needs to be completed. A decision has to be made. What is best for the country, or what is best for the politics? The best for the politics is that from opposition, the Labour Party indicated, we are not going to touch that new building. We're going to finish the old St. Jude, and that was their campaign mantra. So that's politics. Coming into government, there's a new building built by the previous administration. You only need X amount to complete it and give the people a brand new hospital. But if you touch it, which may be what is best for the state, you are not doing what is best for your politics because you're going back on your word. And so a decision has to be made. So that's the the closest example I can give. And many times this does not happen. and it is to the detriment of the country. So again, both political parties, United Workers' Party, Labour Party, we need to be more patriotic, and especially our supporters who are in government, who are working at the various agencies. My advice is that we need to now be a bit more patriotic. We need to think more of the state and the country and advise those in positions of power and policy making decision the best decision for the state. Don't advise them what you think is best for their politics. They will have to make that decision and justify to the electorate why I'm making that decision. But you, in your conscience, you should be able to advise as to what is best for the country, what is best for the state. So at the end of the day, we can move our country forward.
So just going back to the issue of the victimization, because it's important you mentioned it. Just clarify for me. The government sometimes sets up programs like the NICE program, and you have STEP, etc., etc. And then you hear the allegations that I was removed or fired or let go, made redundant because of a change in administration.
Yep.
When people lose their jobs in programs like the NICE program and STEP and all the others that are there, is that victimization?
Victimization is when a person is denied an opportunity because of their political affiliation. And in some of these cases, in some of these jobs, for example, too many persons are being denied an opportunity to work, because remember, it's not the politicians' money paying for STEP, NICE, or whatever. It is the country's money. And these people are residents of the country, and they are entitled, if there is an opportunity for them to work, to feed their family, for them to work. Too many times, the decision as to who gets hired or who gets fired, it's because, that person not supporting me so he can't work, and that person is supporting me so he can work. And that is where you have the victimization happening. I remember last year, on STEP, there was a young lady. In fact, it came out on the news. She came out and she said she had already started working on the STEP in Viewfort South. She had spent, I think, 2 days working already. And apparently the supervisor who was supervising that crew was not there the day. But when the person came and then the person saw her, the supervisor said, but that person is not a supporter of ours. What is she doing there? And the supervisor had her removed. So she only worked 2 days, only because the supervisor perceived that she's not a supporter of the Labour Party. That is wrong, Andre. That is wrong, because what you do... But
Ms. Charles, it's done by both sides.
And that's why I'm saying to you that both parties, in moving forward, we need to stop it. I can say to you, for example, in Viewfort North constituencies, when opportunities were given for persons to be hired by STEP, the criteria that was used were persons, because if it's back to school, then you try to target as many parents as possible, single parents who are not working, who are unemployed, etc. And one thing people from Viewfort North can see, especially in the Grace community, because this is where I live, we try to ensure that there were persons who were in need. And people, for the last year and the last 2 years, persons have come to me and said to me, Miss Nancy, I have to tell you, we're very proud of the way you all were able to work the STEP in the community, because there were both Labour and UWP supporters engaged and working. In this instance, you have no UWP supporter working. And Labour Party people tell me that. They tell me, boy, Miss Nancy, I don't like the way this thing is going, not one. And it's sad. It's unfair. I don't want to say it is what it is. I'm saying that we need to do better. And it's not to say as well, Andre, that political parties will not look out for their supporters. But you shouldn't do it at the expense of persons who are really in need, because you, quote unquote, perceive them not to be supporters. Now, this is a long discussion. This is something that has been going on for years. But I want to let you know, and our listeners know as well, a lot of the things that we are talking about, and I know we've been getting some criticisms that people say, but you all did it and you all were doing it. Lessons learned, Andre. That's what life is about. Life is about when you go through a process and when something happens, you learn lessons from it. You learn the good and the bad. You learn what to do and what not to do. I want to say to St. Lucians, we learned a lot, and I think our political leader, Alan, has said that. Some of our previous cabinet members have said that as well, that we learned a lot. If we had done everything perfectly, we would not be in opposition. So it means that we made mistakes, Maybe we made mistakes that St. Lucians did not approve of. But we are also learning. And so when we speak about some of these policy positions, it is to say to St. Lucians, we have learned those lessons. And if given the chance, when we come into office, we will do better. We will do better. So I think we should have started. We started with that.
I think your guest has arrived.
Yes. So, but a lot has been happening, Andre, in the week. Every week when we come, I try to perhaps speak a little bit about what has been happening during the week before the show. And I think the big thing that has been happening during the week, outside of what we want to talk about today, which is the GPH deal, is Parliament. I'm not too sure if you got a chance to look at what happened in Parliament this week. And Andre, as I went around, I went to Viewfort, I went to some places, and persons are telling me, oh my God, this thing is getting worse and worse and worse in Parliament. It is really putting a distaste for people to even watch what is happening in Parliament, because Parliament is the people's business, Andre. Mm-hmm. It is where the public get to know and understand what some of the policy positions of the government are. Because when decisions are made in cabinet, unfortunately, the cabinet decisions are not publicized for the St. Lucian public to know what decisions cabinet took on various issues. These cabinet discussions are kept private and confidential. I don't know whether they are supposed to be made public. I can be clarified on that. But you don't know. And so when they come to Parliament to pass laws and legislations and to borrow money and various policy positions, that is the only time, I guess, the public gets an opportunity to know what is happening in the country. And especially with this Labour government, that's the only time, because they have a press briefing on a Monday and no information is given. It's just a tax on reporters. They tell you that's not your business. Questions are being avoided. When questions are asked by the reporters about various issues, the associations are being attacked. People are being attacked. I mean, there was an issue with a letter that was sent by some concerned residents in Rodney Bay about the noise issue. I'm sure you heard that. And instead of the minister, being humble and say, listen, we will look into this, the reporters, the minister started attacking who the writer of the letter was or allegedly is. And I think I said to myself, so even if the writer is a United Workers' Party supporter, as the minister wants to allege, does that person not have a right, whether they're UWP or SLP, to say that this thing is affecting us and we need something done about it? So are you saying to me, if it's Labour that says, hey, we have a problem, you will take it on, but if it's a UWP supporter, you're not going to take it on? Ridiculous. So nobody knows what's happening in this government except when they come to Parliament. They avoid the issues, they don't answer the questions. And then, Andre, I looked at the childish behavior of both the Prime Minister, and also I look at the biasness of my very good friend Claudius Francis when it came to what was happening in Parliament. And I'll give you my perspective. What I saw transpired was that the Prime Minister was presenting a motion or a bill, I stand corrected which one it is, to do something that is done every year, to remove the VAT, or what we call it, to give concessions, duty-free concessions on the barrels that people would import. It is something that has been going on for years. Both administrations have done it back and forth. And so I sat down to listen. I thought this was really going to be a 2-minute thing where the Prime Minister is going to take give kudos to his government, of course, obviously, and say we're doing this, etc., etc. And, everybody's just going to vote aye and we move on with the order of the day. Andre, the Prime Minister spoke about GPH. The Prime Minister spoke about Michel, Prime Minister of Grenada. The Prime Minister spoke about DSH. The Prime Minister spoke about every issue that you can think of in this country with reference to presenting a motion for barrel concession. So I'm like, okay. And then when the Prime Minister started speaking about the issue about the DSH and saying that the government gave away 1,000 acres of land to Theo Akin, the leader of the opposition stood up and said that this is inaccurate. We didn't give away so much land. We only leased approximately maybe about 200 acres of land. And he was saying we gave away 1,000 and most of it is what we leased. And leader of the opposition stood up on a point of order. Now, a point of order is a point where if a member is saying something that is wrong, you will stand up and correct the member and say, what you are saying is wrong. This actually is the facts. And then the speaker refused to admonish the prime minister to say, okay, well, the leader of the opposition has indicated what you're saying is wrong. These are the facts. But the prime minister insisted on saying the 1,000, and the leader of the opposition insisted on clarifying and saying this is wrong. You can't allow it. So for me, when I looked at Claudius's behavior, it was, I don't even know how to describe it, but to me, as the Speaker of the House, you're supposed to ensure that information that is given there, once the information is clarified, is as accurate as possible. And that did not transpire.
So he didn't allow the leader of the opposition to clarify? Is that what you're saying?
The leader of the opposition stood up and said that the information that the prime minister is given is incorrect. What should have happened is for the Speaker of the House to say to the Prime Minister or whoever is presenting at the time, this is the point of order. The member has given the correct information. I need you to correct the information that you're given.
What I'm asking,
but he didn't do so.
Was the leader of the opposition allowed, or
he was allowed
was he
to
able
stand
to
up?
say?
But every time he stood up, to say that the Prime Minister is saying the same, because the Prime Minister said the same thing 4 times. Andre, 4 times. And you can go back maybe and listen to the tape. And every single time he said the same thing, the leader of the opposition said, this is inaccurate. And it ensued in me saying, wow. I couldn't believe that the speaker would show his biasness so much. But coming out of that, I think it was the great big announcement that everybody is talking about. And maybe sometime in the next couple of weeks, we can talk about it, because we will have to wait on the decision.
Sorry, I'm sorry to disturb you. Just for clarification, I'm asking, was when the leader of the opposition stood up on a point of order, did the Speaker of the House allow him to make his point?
Yes.
In other words, to say, well, the 1,000 acres is not correct. Here, these are the facts.
Right.
So he was allowed to do that.
He was allowed to say that, but he did not admonish the Prime Minister to say, this is the correct information, so do not repeat the wrong information anymore. In a nutshell, in summary. And this is what is supposed to happen. And so the Prime Minister, once the leader of the opposition said that, the Speaker said, I've heard you. Then the Prime Minister said the same 1,000 acre and given all. And then the Speaker didn't stop him. So the leader of the opposition said, Mr. Speaker, he's still saying the wrong thing. And he said, I've ruled. And then the Prime Minister said the same thing a 3rd time. And the leader of this, Mr. Speaker, please tell the member it's wrong. And he said, I've ruled. And he just tell him, continue, go ahead. So again, it's like you saying something that is wrong. We're having a dialogue. And I say to you, Andre, that is not right. This is the correct information. And you go back and still say the wrong thing. It says that you just don't care. You understand? But in any event, it's the big announcement. The big announcement that on Friday, the Speaker of the House is going to make a decision as to whether the live broadcasting of Parliament or parliamentary sittings will be allowed. Because I think as...
And again, can you explain to us what led up to the Speaker making that announcement?
I have no idea.
Are you serious?
I have no idea. I think the Speaker will give that clarification. I am assuming it is because of what transpired, that back and forth, because at one point in time, he did ask the NTN to turn off the cameras so he can do what he needs to do and make a decision on something that... So I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I think we will be waiting on that. But I thought I should just let St. Lucians understand that whilst it is within the purview of the Speaker, because as I understand it, the Speaker is the one who runs the House and allows what he chooses to or not. So while it is the purview of the Speaker to do that, we're not taking that away from him. I think it would be a great disservice to the St. Lucian public in terms of the democracy of this country. In every civilized country that you know, in the UK, in the US, wherever it is, the House sittings are televised so that the public can see and know what laws and legislations are being passed in the Parliament, what is happening in our country, what is it the politicians are doing or the members of Parliament are doing on our behalf in the region, etc. And so to even have made such a pronouncement, I really think St. Lucians have to stand up against this I think, in my opinion, that it is another opportunity or another way that the speaker is showing his biasness, and I think usurping the authority that he has been given to by the people of St. Lucia. But in any event, we will hear about it on Friday.
So the opposition has no idea as to why the speaker would make such a pronouncement?
We will hear on Friday, Andre, why the speaker should be able to give his rationale and as to why he makes that pronouncement and what his decision is going to be. But we will move on. I just thought that St. Lucians should understand what is really happening in terms of the democracy of this country. I think during the time of COVID, and there was a time when you had a lot of Labour Party supporters coming in to try and disrupt the parliament. So the police, and it was never the Prime Minister who asked the police to do that. I know I was there, and I remember clearly it was the police who said to ensure the free flow of traffic, because there were a lot of people gathering around trying to disturb and block the traffic. And the police, normally on Parliament days, would come in. They would put certain barricades to ensure that there was free flow of traffic and people would not gather to create too much of a disruption. And then the United Workers' Party was accused of preventing people from gathering in that area to hear what is happening in Parliament. So imagine if UWP was accused of that, and now the Labour Party is proposing that they're not even going to televise it. So 180,000 people, the population, who sits down on a Tuesday and on a Thursday to listen what is what happening in the Parliament of St. Lucia, there's a possibility you may be denied to know what is happening in the country. So this is where we're heading in this country.
So sorry again.
But
sorry.
As we move
is
on,
the speaker the sole individual who has that power to decide whether the proceedings are televised or not televised?
Apparently the standing orders give
say?
him that authority.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. GPH, Andre, that's another big issue. I'm sure St. Lucians would have heard in the last couple of weeks we've been speaking about and sharing our concerns on GPH and the deal. The Prime Minister promised to make public the deal once it was signed and it was agreed on. I remember a couple of months ago, he spoke about that when asked, and he said, the deal has not been signed, and once the deal is signed, they'll make it public. We still have not had public access to it, but we get bits and pieces of information as to what is contained in there. And we've also been taking a look at GPH itself, the company. What is it that they're about, how financially secure they are, etc., etc. And so there's a lot of information for St. Lucians to hear and to learn about. And I thought that perhaps I would bring in somebody who's been on this matter for a while, even before that agreement was signed while we were in government. He was the former Minister of Economic Development, and he would have had extensive discussions with DPH, because this is not a new deal. This is something that they've been trying to bring to St. Lucia for a while, and the previous administration had discussions with them. And so in studio today, I have my guest, our deputy political leader. He's the former minister, as I said, of Economic Development, and he's been the parliamentary representative for the constituency of Castries South East for, is it 3 consecutive terms? Yes. Let us welcome to studio Guy Joseph. Guy, good morning.
Good morning, Nancy, and good morning, Andre.
Good morning.
It's nice to be on Rev-Up this morning. My first time, the last time I was interviewed by you, it was in a completely different environment.
That's true. do you prefer this one?
Well,
Andre's getting free advertisement this morning.
I guess I will determine that. But Andre, in St. Lucian, maybe just to segue a little bit, maybe before we go into the meat of the discussion, is that there are some programs that are just unique to individuals. And if somebody else tries to do it, it's just not the same. and you would know that about media. So when we consider talk, without Rick, talk is not talk. If you look at Newspin, without Timothy, Newspin is not Newspin. And what makes me mad is just not what makes me mad without you.
It probably makes you glad right now.
I mean, they are butchering this program left, right, and center. And I'm not here to bash any station or anything, but it is so unprofessional to invite a guest to your program and to be treated the way my colleague Spider was treated on. I mean, Spider can handle himself, but that is the lowest of lows that what makes me mad, I think, has ever gone to. And it says a lot. And I thought about you, Andre, when I was listening to the program. I said, boy, look at what the fella's doing with a program that Andre was handling.
And Andre took years to build up that program.
It's just amazing. So I just thought I would put that in by way of pass.
Thank you very much.
You causing Andre to blush this morning.
Yes. But sorry, I know I'm not the host of the show. But since you're here, Mr. Joseph, I know you've had several run-ins with this, former speaker or speakers of the House and so on. I was just curious to get your take on what Nancy was talking about earlier.
It is, I mean, I've tried to rationalize it. The Parliament of St. Lucia is supposed to be a place where the opposition gets more leverage than the government. And that is how it has been. And I think when Andy was speaker, we saw the opposition getting more leverage. Because I used to put pressure on Andy and say to him, man, every day I'm in this thing is like you favor in the opposition. Because the minority is looked upon. And even the members of the opposition claim that. And there were 6 of them to 11 of us at the time. And they would say, you all want to deprive us. And if you go back to Hansard, when 6 of them would speak on everything, maybe 3 of us on the government side would speak. We saw that as a minority, they were able to bring a motion of a vote of no confidence, which did not pass eventually, but they had their full day. You're looking at what is happening in the parliament today, and I don't blame entirely all of the parliamentarians who are there. Some of them are new and they are not very familiar with some of the operations of the parliament. But you have an individual with an overinflated ego in the person of Claudius as Speaker of the House. Mm-hmm. And once you believe that you are more than what you really are, then you are likely to make these serious blunders and the handling of the matters of the House. So take myself and Peter, when Peter was the Speaker of the House. Many times I would tell Peter outside of the Parliament, I would tell him, brother, the way you handling this thing, the 2 of us will clash in the Parliament one of these days because you continue to make rulings and this. And we would laugh and joke about it. And I would say that there was a level of fairness with Peter that I have not seen with Claudius at all in terms of his handling of the Parliament. When we had the clash is because Peter thought I was going down a particular road which I was not going down at all. But he refused because I guess it was close to home. So he did not want me to venture into that area. And I had to tell him, I'd warned you about that already, that we were going to clash. And it created the opportunity because I believe in fairness. I believe, if you would recall, even when we went to Parliament and Sir John was there, and we wanted to give Dr. Anthony more time to speak. And my colleagues voted no. I voted yes to allow him as leader. And they actually went for a division. And the division would show that I voted to allow Dr. Anthony more time. I would ask members of the opposition, you want me to make a motion on your behalf? One time I asked Dr. Anthony, you want me to make a motion on your behalf for extra time? He said, I don't want time from you.
I think I remember that.
So I believe that if truth is on your side, you should have no fear of what the other persons are saying. Now look at the disparity in government today. You have 2 members of the opposition. You have 15 members on the government side. It really should be 13, but it's 15 because the Prime Minister has claimed that there are 15 of them. They won 15
They
too.
won 15
So I can't consider the other 2 independents anymore because they won with the Labour Party. So for you to attempt on several occasions, first of all, you stop the budget debate prematurely. because usually the leader of the opposition get to listen to everybody's presentation, make his presentation at the end, and then the prime minister gives the rebuttal. When Philip J. Pierre became leader of the opposition, that changed to an extent where he would be the first speaker. And I kept on telling him, man, how you leader and you the first speaker? You're supposed to be the last speaker before the prime minister. So we got a little confusion between 2013 when the leader of the opposition was changed from Stevenson King to Dr. Gail Rigobert. And then what happened is that there was always a conflict. And if we didn't choose to speak, then they would close the debate. So you would find Mr. James, the late Mr. James, myself, Estefan and Gil, we would have to speak. Even if when UWP was there, we had a speaking order that we would agree, okay, one member of the government or two members of the government, one member of the opposition. And then that worked well for the time we were there. Now what we are seeing, Andre, in the Parliament of St. Lucia is a one-sided affair, where I've told them it's not 15 against 2, it is 17. Because you now have the speaker, and I've heard the speaker engage in things that speakers don't engage in at all. Speakers not supposed to give explanation. That's why I clashed with Peter. Because I told Peter Foster, you cannot come and explain a contract to me. You're supposed to listen to what I'm saying. Because while your title is speaker, you should be quiet. I never know why they call it speaker, because that's the person who has to be listening. And that's why I said to Peter, you can't be part of the debate. You cannot come and tell me what I'm saying. Which is what I've seen Claudius engaging in on several occasions. Now, if I was in the parliament, I would have had more clashes with Claudius than I had with Peter. But to round up what I'm saying, they closed the budget debate prematurely so the prime minister could not make his contribution, and maybe 5 members of the government side did not speak in that budget debate. Then they made a motion to remove him from the house. Actually got the sergeant of arms to escort him out. He went to court. He won the matter. That is another attempt to silence the opposition. You are now making a decision. And I listened to the clipping. I actually have it on my phone, where Claudius said his rationale is so off for the members of the house. He said this is his house. And that is true. That is what the standing orders say. The parliament is presided over by the Speaker of the House. So, Andre, I try to rationalize that in my head. I said, this is your house, so this is your children. Your children in your house, they are not behaving themselves. You cannot control them. You cannot get them to stick to the rules of your house. But you're not going to do anything about that. You're going to turn on the people in the country and say, well, you can see my children misbehaving in my house. So I relate it to, so you have your children in your house, they're not listening to you, they're misbehaving, but you go down the road and there's a playing field there, and you say, nobody can watch this game that is going on there because my children are not behaving. I mean, who does Claudius think he's speaking to? A bunch of cowards and illiterate? I mean, Claudius has proven that he cannot manage the Parliament of St. Lucia. So to hide his inefficiencies, and many of them have been televised. You saw the one where Richard was saying to Joachim, man, I tell you, you're not speaking. And after Alva had put on his mic and was ready to speak, Richard asked him, and the speaker had already acknowledged him. Richard asked him to sit down so that he could speak. And Claudius sat there with all of that happening, not being able to say a word. So I'm wondering whether he's still feeling threatened, as he had claimed that he was threatened before, and that he is controlled. So not being able to do that. As a little boy growing up on Radio St. Lucia, which was maybe, there was just Radio St. Lucia and Radio Caribbean at the time. It's not like now we have almost 40 radio stations.
41.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm just joking.
we now in a situation where the media is liberalized. You know, so I used to have my transistor radio listening to the late Alan Bousquet and Mr. Sinclair Daniel, and he was the least heard, but when he spoke with authority. You know, I remember back in the day when the new buildings were being built, and one of the Labour Party MPs said, Mr. Speaker, you know the steel they use in there is not even the size of the rod of the speaker. And then the speaker said, Honorable Member, you know, the things that happened there, they were very witty. And at the end of the day, Claudius has proven that because of his overinflated ego, that he cannot be impartial. And I expect you to have a certain level of bias towards your government. That is human nature. But to be so blatant on every turn. So let's look at what transpired. How can 168 acres be the majority of 1,000? And Claudius has been out there explaining that the leader of the opposition should have stood up on a point of clarification and not a point of order.
Oh, really?
He's wrong. From my understanding of the standing orders that I operated under for 15 years, you can stand on a point of elucidation, but the person does not have to yield. So if I say I'm standing on a point of clarification, the person making the presentation is not obligated to yield. They can just disregard me and continue. And there's nothing the speaker can do about that. Whereas, if you stand on a point of order, now a point of order, if I have to stand on a point of elucidation, is because I said something and now the person is repeating what I'm saying and misrepresenting. So that's an example. So if I said, the sky is green, and then you come and say, you know, he said the sea is green, and it's reflecting on the sky. I would stand on a point of elucidation and say, no, that is not what I said. But a point of order is where wrong information is given, and it is going to go down in Hansard as part of the record of what transpired in the House. I have an obligation to stand on a point of order and to say that person is misleading the House by misrepresenting the information that is presented. So I believe the leader of the opposition was in the right to stand on a point of order because, number one, DSH was not given 1,000 acres of land on lease, or the majority of 1,000 acres. Because 168 acres cannot be the majority of 1,000. The majority of 1,000 would have to be at least 501. So it would constitute
for the record,
more.
I do not think that the total acreage of land was even 1,000 as well. I think it was closer between 600 and 800 thereabout, and it did not amount to 1,000. But 1,000 is what resonates with the public guy, because this is what the Labour Party has been channeling. I mean, throughout the entire time in opposition.
Here's the thing about
that's
it,
what
Nancy,
makes it so wrong.
Nancy, and Andre, it's important that you ask that question. The Prime Minister has all the information at his disposal in the office of the Prime Minister. Now, that is the leverage you have as an opposition parliamentarian. You are not required to present evidence because you are not part of the cabinet. So you can make an assertion, you can make a statement, you can say something. If a government minister, on the other hand, says something, he is obligated to present the facts to back up what he is saying. And for a parliamentarian of over 25 years, Philip J. Pierre, you would think that he would understand these basic elements of parliamentary procedure and to come forward and say, here are the documents that for the information I'm presenting. Here are the 1,000 acres of land that was leased. Here is the agreement that was signed to Teo Akim for $1.
But Guy, do you think that Philip J. Pierre will ever do that? Because you and I both know that the information based on the contracts that have been signed, Invest St. Lucia has all the information. The Office of the Prime Minister has all the information. That information would be contrary to what the Labour Party has been peddling over the last couple of years. So do you think the Prime Minister will ever come to Parliament and present the correct document to say this is the information, this is the correct information, knowing that it would be contradictory to what the Labour Party and himself has and had been peddling over the last couple of years?
That is what you expect from any honorable individual. I was in opposition. I didn't have the information at my disposal. So I came because that is the information I received. It's like GPH that we are going to come to. I am saying things about GPH that tomorrow I can be corrected if the evidence shows otherwise. And I would have an obligation to say, well, I said that, but this is not what it was. I cannot continue to say this is what it is when the evidence is proving otherwise. So from the time he assumed the office of Prime Minister, he would have looked at the documents and realized there was not 1,000 acres of land involved. 1,000 acres was not leased for $1. So the basic thing you would expect of a Prime Minister who's supposed to be an individual with integrity is to come back and say, oh, if you don't want to correct it, refrain from repeating it.
Yes.
Don't say it.
Yes.
So, like some people would say, I plead the Fifth Amendment on this. I'm not saying anything. Okay, but that is what we say sometimes. So now you look at it, Andre. The land that was involved in the horse racing track is the only land that was leased. The rest of the land, Teo Akim purchased
the land.
And he purchased it for more money than the Range Development Board beachfront property. I mean, how can you even try to compare the two? Beachfront property was sold cheaper to Range than Teo Akim bought the land all the way inside, so far from the beach, with a garbage site close by, and things that would devalue property in an area. He paid more money than he paid for beachfront property. How can the Prime Minister, as a responsible leader, as the head of a country, having all that information at your disposal, come to the Parliament of St. Lucia, misleading the entire world about this information, and the leader of the opposition is supposed to take his seat because the speaker says you sit? There are times you must stand. There are times you must sit, like Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks sat when she was asked to stand. But there are times when you are supposed to take a stand, and that is what the leader of the opposition do. That would trigger the member, the Speaker of the House, to decide, well, no longer will St. Lucians be aware of what is transpiring. Now, I got a note from a very reliable source that what the Speaker did there can constitute an assault and a threat. The Speaker said to the member, you sit. And then he called for the sergeant of arms. And it's not calling for the sergeant of arms. But when he said, I'm calling on GIS to switch off, so we can do, so what needs to be done? So how would we know what is to be done? Isn't that the same Speaker who said, whoever, it could be a mosquito, is a bazooka he's coming with?
But Guy, why would, again, if you know whatever it is that you're doing is within the confines of the law and within the standing orders of the House, why would a speaker, and I don't want to belabor the point because we're running out of time, we need to talk about GPH, but just on a final note, why would you want to ask for the cameras to be turned off to make a decision if you know that
No,
the
it was
decision
not to make a decision.
or to do whatever it is you need to do?
That is what
if
I
it is
believe
within the confines of the law.
That
If it
constitutes
is nothing
a threat.
wrong, why would
So-
you not want people to see or know?
So listen to me, Nancy. If the rest of us are here and the person come and say, "Y'all get out of the room so I can
do
deal
it,
with him,"
Andre.
so you are asking. Already you are in an environment where the majority, 99%, is stacked against you. And the public can have an eye. That's like telling the police in America who have these body cams
to turn
that
it
they're
off.
going to do something, so they turn off the body cam. They are not, it is illegal to turn off the body cam and to do anything because you cannot account for what transpired there. So for Claudius, as Speaker of the House, to say to the member, you already called the Sergeant of Arms to him. You have already threatened people with bazooka. And then you are saying, switch off the cameras. People are treating these things lightly, Andre. This is not to be treated lightly. These are serious matters. We're talking about the Parliament of St. Lucia. So what can we tell the criminals out there? What can we tell the average bad boy on the street about his behavior and his conduct? When all the people who used to cry, your behavior in the house, your conduct in the house, what kind of example are you all setting for the young people? So it's only UWP that have to set example for the young people. The present government does not have to set an example. But we can move on because we can take the whole morning to speak on this, you know.
So, Guy, and as I said, we've spoken a lot about what is happening in this country, and I think I just want to add as well, in light of this and what has been transpiring in Parliament, this, I think I want to add, is one of the reasons why St. Lucians should come out on the 30th of November to show their displeasure as to what is happening in the Parliament of St. Lucia and the Speaker who is asserting some type of authority that perhaps he does not have. But let us talk about GPH.
In fact, before you go there, many people have told me, even if I would not join the march on the 30th, you see, on the basis of the threat to our democracy and our parliament, that they need to come out and voice their concerns, not to Claudius. Nobody didn't vote for Claudius. The members of the House were the ones who elected him. The Prime Minister was the chief. And they want to send a message to Philip JP as Prime Minister of St. Lucia. We are not going to sit by and allow you to become a dictator in our country, and that we, the people, would not know what is transpiring in the people's parliament.
And I think the people have a right to say so. And again, this is the opportunity, I think, that the United Workers' Party is affording St. Lucians, that St. Lucians, perhaps, who feel they do not have a voice, they hear what is happening, and maybe they just call the talk show and to say something. But it is now an opportunity for St. Lucians to come out and to show their face and to say, listen, I am Nancy Charles and I am not happy with what is happening in this country. I'm not happy with the Prime Minister allowing a non-elected member in the Parliament of St. Lucia to suppress the elected members of Parliament. So I'm going to come out and I'm going to take a stand just to say to this government that I do not support that. So we are very grateful for that. But let's now go on to GPH, Global Ports Holding. I think persons have said to me, what is GPH? And we've had to say to them, it's the shortened version for the name of the company that the government of St. Lucia, as we understand, has entered into an agreement with reference to the development of the port in St. Lucia. So if you can perhaps, as in a short time as possible, because it's already 10 o'clock, to summarize maybe the history of this matter with Global Ports. So where does it stem from? How did it begin? And to a certain extent, how did we get to where we're at today? And then we can talk a little bit about GPH itself. But give us a little bit of a history of that.
GPH is a company that was established, I think, back in 2003 or thereabout, where they took over certain ports in Europe, and they became a broker. That's basically what GPH is. So it's like you have goods, and you get a broker to go and clear your goods for you. Or maybe we can refer to them more as a travel agency.
So they don't own the airline, but they're the one who's going to book the flights for you. So they're the liaison between the traveler, the airline, and the airline.
So that is basically what GPH is. GPH is like SLASPA. They go in and they manage and operate ports. They don't really build ports as such, you know. They go into areas where ports are already established, and then they go into lease arrangements. They go into short term. I mean, when I look at, so let me try and summarize it so the people can have an appreciation. GPH saw a business opportunity in areas where ports maybe were not performing as best as they could, or where there was a need for somebody to come in and maybe boost up the business in the area.
So what is already there, you want to boost it up and make it a little bit better. And so GPH is the one that you would call to say, my port is already performing. I think we can perform at a higher level. And would you be able to come in and work with us to be able to get it to perform at
that is what GPH would have started the business with, a model. Because the information is there, you know, about Global Ports Holdings and what they do. So they go and look at certain areas and they started some things. But then they realized that the cruise ships are the ones who dictate what happens in this business. Where they go, the rates and everything, they negotiate with governments. So what GPH has been trying to do is to take over sufficient ports within the region, and I will focus on our region. So they went into the Bahamas. They spent $250 million US on the ports in the Bahamas, but the government of Bahamas only allowed them to have 49% shares of the port. Then they went to Antigua. They were spending another $83 million in Antigua.
That's US or EC?
US.
Okay.
All the currencies we are calling there
is US.
US.
All right.
They spend $83 million there. But if you do the research on Antigua, you would see that the cruise lines was forcing a renegotiation. Then they were negotiating with St. Lucia and Barbados. We refused to sign with them because we wanted them to go and develop a port in Vieux-Fort. We said, we already have our port in Castries. There are little things we need to do, but we can manage Port Castries ourselves. If you want to do something, go and do it in Vieux-Fort. Build a terminal, a cruise ship terminal there that we can do home porting, where people can begin their cruise and end their cruise there. They did not want to do that. And so we were not willing to allow them to come and take over Port Castries if they were not willing to develop Port Vieux-Fort.
So it goes to what you said initially, that they're not into building new ports.
I wouldn't say they don't build new ports. They may build berths on, but to say somewhere, I don't know that they built a port where there's no port. But I will not say they have not because I have not completed all of my research on GPH. So I was saying this just to highlight what they do. And so coming to St. Lucia, when we discussed with them and we saw they were not willing to, we went to the cruise lines ourselves. We met with Royal Caribbean, we met with Carnival Cruise Lines, and we met with MSC. the Prime Minister, we were in Washington meeting with, it was World Bank meeting and everything. After the meeting, the Prime Minister flew to Puerto Rico, met with the free cruise lines, and signed a memorandum of understanding with the cruise lines that they were going to come together, the three cruise lines, because they are the ones who operate the ships. GPH does not own a cruise ship as far as the information I have seen.
Okay.
So it's not like they can say, okay, we have our cruise ships, we can bring it here. The cruise ships that are going to come here will continue to be from MSC, Royal Caribbean, and Carnival.
So it means that GPH would now have to go and negotiate with those cruise lines to ensure that their ships can come to St.
Which is what SLASPA has already been doing for all the years we have cruise.
Okay.
I mean, we had 1 million cruise passengers in 2019 or thereabout. So what is it that GPH is bringing to the table? Nothing. And we are giving them ready-made cash that is guaranteed. Presently, we are collecting $6.50 from every passenger that disembarks the ship in St. Lucia.
Mm-hmm.
$1.50 of this goes to solid waste. You are now giving GPH this full $6.50 to give us back $4. Or now, for GPH to do what they are doing there, they are going to try to force the hand of the cruise ships to raise the price. Whereas the cruise lines had in principle discussed with us that they were willing to raise the fees per head that would go towards paying for the port development in Viewfort.
So let's just go back a little bit. The memorandum of understanding that then Prime Minister Chasney had signed with the three cruise line, that was for port development where?
In Viewfort.
And it would have been home porting as well.
It would be home porting.
And then
let's explain home porting. Home porting is where the cruise begins. So people flying on an airline, they board the ship in St. Lucia, they travel the 7 destinations, and the ship returns to St. Lucia.
So it means that
they disembark the ship, and then they catch a flight. So it means that some of them would stay a day or two before and a day or two after, which was going to bring major economic activity to the south of the island. You need more hotels. I mean, you go to the Marriott hotels in Miami, you know how many of them accommodate just cruise passengers? So what the cruise lines do is they arrange a special package where they get reduced prices and that's why we were thinking of developing a Marriott down in the south, because we believe that this was going to generate a lot of economic activity. And what we had discussed, Andre and Nancy, was a minimum of 75,000 passengers per year. Now think of these 75,000 passengers, each of them paying $98 for coming on a flight.
So then that's
the airport departure tax.
Right.
So outside of what they would be paying to disembark or to embark the ship, they would be paying that $98. You know how much money? In that GPH deal,
so
when I did the basic calculations,
you're saying that this increased passenger based on the cruise for development, in addition to our regular tourists who would have been coming in, that's additional money that would go towards the airport development tax as well.
Yes.
So it was kind of like a double whammy where you would have had development of the port in the south, but when the passengers come in, you would collect that revenue to go towards the airport development tax and the development of the new airport.
Exactly. And that is why we were leaving the old terminal where it was there. We were building the new terminal because we would have made this a dedicated terminal for the cruise passengers coming in. So they don't mix with the rest of the passengers. They come in, their luggage is checked and everything. If they're going straight on the ship, then, I mean, the master development plan for Viewfort would surpass Castries in a short space of time because the development plans were clear. Andre, I went on in Parliament and I said I bought a piece of land in Viewfort. You know why I bought the piece of land in Viewfort? And I declared it because as a member of Parliament, you had to do your
Filing
integrity.
for the Integrity Commission.
But I publicly announced because I believe that property values would go up so much in Viewfort that if I bought early, I would be ahead of the game. I mean, that is what good business people do.
Right.
And I didn't buy from government. While government have 10,000, I bought from a private developer. One of Valmore's sons who had the land developing in Mulashik. I bought it there. I didn't go to government and try and acquire government land below market price or anything. I went through the proper channels of doing it. So what I'm saying here, when I look at what Slasper had been doing, the amount of money we are giving over $2 billion EC dollars in revenue by going into that arrangement with GPH for a 40 million US dollars or 45 million. And even if it's 50 million US, that's 135 million EC dollars. You're giving $2 billion for that?
So let's go into the GPH deal. I think you've quite explained to St. Lucians what we have lost, because as far as you're aware, there's been no more negotiations with the 3 cruise lines for that port development in the south. That has been scrapped, and then the previous arrangement, which GPS was trying to bring to the table for port catcheries, has come back to the table or resurfaced with this new administration.
So Nancy,
yes,
my concern is what is happening, and I like to see my Caribbean neighbors do well.
right.
But I want to see St. Lucia do better. That's where I live. That's where everything I have is in St. Lucia. When I saw St. Vincent had 377 cruise ship calls for this year.
So what is
of
that in
cruise.
comparison? Do you know what is that in comparison to St. Lucia?
Up to now, I don't know because the schedule for St. Lucia keep changing every week. And I know the cruise lines are sending us a message. We are not paying attention. But when the time comes and there will not be an opportunity to fix the problem, then we would start crying foul. So let me show you what has happened. In October, there was supposed to be 4 calls. 3 of them cancelled. We had 1.
Wow.
Okay? Every week. And when the schedule is set, the schedule is set a year, 2 years in advance. Schedules don't change just like that. So all of a sudden, every time there is an adjustment in St. Lucia, the cruise lines are sending us a message. Because here's what we've done. And I want St. Lucians and all listeners and viewers online listening to us on Rev-Up to be able to understand. You have cut out the person who owns the ship from developing your port in St. Lucia. And you have now gone to a broker,
Or a middleman, yes.
a middleman, who is going to try to overtax the ship.
That same ship who had, quote unquote, an MOU with St. Lucia to do the port development, you've cut them out and say, I'm not doing business with you anymore. I'm going to a middleman, and that middleman now have to come back to those same people to renegotiate for them to come to your port.
So the
In a nutshell.
middleman is going to use the leverage you give him to try and exploit the cruise ship. That is elementary, you know. I don't know how much simpler I can make this.
And that's business.
You are
as well, guys.
you are telling me that, okay, I own my ship. I am willing to build a port to come here. I'm willing to give you the money to pay for the port. But you own the port. The cruise ships would not own the port, you know. The arrangement was that the 3 cruise lines come together, they put the resources, they build the port. After they build the port, the government, the value of building the port, the government is paying them back. But they're increasing the head tax to allow you to collect sufficient money to be able to pay them back. So you're not putting any added burden on the taxpayer in St. Lucia, and you're benefiting billions of dollars in the process. Now, think of the cruise lines having their own port in St. Lucia. You think there'll be an off-season?
No, because
When it is their investment that is there initially. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer. You don't need to go to school to understand. That's a no-brainer. So there must be an ulterior motive on the part of the government to go into that arrangement. And that's why I mentioned St. Vincent. You know what Dr. Ralph Gonzalez is doing? The money he got from the Saudis, he's building a new cruise port.
So he's not going with GPH.
No.
Who has the extensive experience in port management, etc.
That's right. Port
Using
management.
His own money.
He's building a port where, so can you imagine with all the Grenadine islands, St. Lucia and St. Vincent, no difference, you know, the cruise ships will pass us straight and head to St. Vincent.
Because
So you think GPH will come and say, oh, you must pay me $12 per head, and St. Vincent is doing it for $8? You think they're going to stop in Port Castries and not go to St. Vincent
for $8?
And Ralph is building to accommodate them. So yes, they may come for the first couple of years until other ports. I mean, let's look at Barbados. The previous government signed an arrangement with GPH. As soon as Prime Minister Mia came in, she put that on hold. She said, what is the added value to what you are bringing? And this is what we are asking St. Lucia. That is what we are asking, because the government will not listen. But you know, I said it, and I know I can be criticized for saying it. Stevenson King, Kenny Anthony, Philip J. Pierre, Guy Joseph, Alan Chasney, we very likely will not be there for the next 40 years. Because I don't think I'm going to live to 90 plus. At least I don't want to live to 90 plus. Okay? I want to die when it making sense to die. Okay? But, I mean, Dr. Anthony is what? Almost 70 or past 70. So we expect him to live to 110. Pierre is 60 something. We expect him to live to 107. Stevenson King, we expect him to live to 110. So when these men make these decisions, and remember, they were criticizing the UWP government for leasing land to Teoakim, land that is vacant, land that is not generating $1 for St. Lucia. All we had was a few squatters with their cows on the property. That is all. To have a racetrack developed, you felt that we were giving away the patrimony of this country. Today we have a port that is generating, and when I check back between 2006 and 2010, when we were negotiating with Dubai Port World, that is for cargo, we were making $10 million as SLASPER a year. So when the fellas came in and they said to me, Dubai Ports World, they said, we want to do this thing with y'all, but we want it to be 70-30, we spending all the money. And again, it was around $40 million they were looking. I said, so you want to come and spend this money in St. Lucia, and you want a 70-30. I agree to a 70-30. But the 70-30 does not include my 10 million that SLASPER is earning already. Any additional business you bring in on top of the 10, we can go 70-30. But you see this $10 million that SLASPER is making, it remains with SLASPER. And if it's $40 million you're going to spend, in 4 years, we can make that money to spend ourselves. So they did not take the deal, they left and went there. That is how I negotiated on behalf of St. Lucia. And when GPH came to us, it's the same thing. We kept on saying to GPH, we have our deep water harbor. We just extended the berth at Point Seraphine. There's a little work that needs to be done on the northern wharf, but that is not a major issue. We can do that.
But Guy, do you know, it's a question I've asked, and I'd like perhaps a person have asked that question already. For the $40 million investment that GPH is supposed to make in the cruise, in the port both between Castries and Soufrière, can you give us a summary, or do you know what does that investment entail? What exactly is it that they will be doing for that $40 million?
I have no idea, Nancy, because the government has not disclosed. I know port charges are going to go up.
So they have not, the government has not come out to say for the $40 million, they will be building this, they will be extending this, they will be doing that. We don't know what the $40 million is for.
And that is what amazes me. Where are the studies that have been done to determine how much money is required to be spent?
Mm-hmm.
What is the extent of the works that are going to take place?
So does that sound familiar? Because there's another project.
It's same with St. Jude.
I thought so.
The government went and borrowed 201 million, and they don't know the price of St. Jude, and they don't know the price of repairing the stadium.
Okay, so
and up to today, nobody can tell us. I mean,
that's a history.
Is that how we run a country? The first thing you do, I mean, even the Bible, and I know Andre is familiar, you would be familiar, Nancy. The Bible tells you who starts something without first sitting down and counting the cost. To know whether you have sufficient to finish, that you do not become an embarrassment, that you start something and you cannot finish it. Basic, elementary knowledge you would expect people in government to apply. And nobody is applying the basics.
So, Guy, let's talk a little bit now. I think sometime last week we had a town hall meeting, and there was some interesting information that you had researched, and I think you said that the information is available on the internet, as a matter of fact, on the website of GPH, which I thought was very interesting. So whilst we do not know what the 40 million, what is it we're getting exactly for the $40 million, we've been told, or we're aware that the management of the port will be given over to GPH. So it means that all the $10 million that you last spoke about, all of the money goes
all
to
the
GPH.
Money you're making is going
and
to
apparently
GPH.
there'll be a sharing of how much GPH retains and how much it gives, quote unquote, to SLASPA or the government, right? But I think there was some interesting information that you would have spoken about with GPH and the investments that they've made in the region. And also, there was some also interesting information about what really happens to SLASPA. And I was curious about that. Persons were asking the questions. I was not able to answer. And so I said perhaps I would bring you in on the show to explain the rationale as to how you came to such conclusions, or even asking such questions. And I think I also want to make it very clear. You said earlier on, as the opposition, because we do not have sufficient information, we are asking questions, we are making inferences that we stand corrected by. So if the government comes out and says, this is not the case, this is what exactly is, then we can say, okay, we stand corrected because we are asking those questions. So can you share a little bit about that in terms of what some of your thoughts were, some of the information that you were able to gather, so that St. Lucians can understand what exactly we're dealing with and why we are very, very concerned about that deal?
Okay, so let's run through it. We have GPH business model. Their primary service is port services and their ancillary services, and their revenue breakdown is as follows. Their primary port services account for 70 to 75% of their revenue. Their ancillary services accounts for 25 to 30% of their revenue. So let's look at the primary services, what it entails. Terminal services, embarkation and disembarkation services. So that's as the people come in on the cruise ships. Check-in, luggage, security. Port services, berthing and mooring, shore services, stevedoring, water supply. Marine services, pilotage and towing. So everything that SLASPA is doing now
will be managed by
including the stevedores, will be taken up. That is GPH business model.
So does
That is what they engage in to make 70 to 75% of their revenue.
So, Guy,
so
are you
it means the
suggesting-
tugboats we
Yes.
have there that's bringing in the ships, the pilots,
they'll be working for GPH, not
Yes.
SLASPA.
berthing and mooring, shore services, stevedoring, water supply. Now, we know Wasco is the one supplying water. So will Wasco now have to sell the water to GPH, and GPH in turn will be selling the water
to SLASPA?
to the cruise
The
ships?
cruise ships, right. So the middleman is always in there.
And I have been exposed to negotiations where cruise ships were pulling out of St. Lucia because they were getting free water out of Dominica.
Oh.
So I don't know whether St. Lucians and the taxi drivers and all of them. Now let's go
Let's
to
go
the
to the ancillary
ancillary.
services.
Let's go to the ancillary services and see what makes 40% of the money of GPH. Guest information centers. So the booths that you have where you
Where the guests come in and ask where, right?
booths selling tickets and attractions.
Oh.
So all of the attractions
The
that
tour
are in
operators.
St. Lucia, where the tour operators do their stuff and people go there and the boat services and everything, GPH appears that they will have a commission from all of that. In fact, they will be the ones determining who can be there and who cannot be there and what tours they're going to sell. Travel, retail, offices, food and beverage and public area rentals, car parking, advertisement and events, other marine vending crew centers, etc. That accounts, these services accounts for 25 to 30% of the revenue of GPH.
So the vendors, arcade.
We don't know, it is outside the port where the event, because remember I said 40 years is a long time. 40 years is not 40 days. It's only in the Bible a day represents a year, and a year is equivalent to a day. In natural human time, 40 years is 40 years. And that's a whole generation. That's like a lifetime. Because the Bible was divided into generations of 40 years. So at the end of the day, what we are seeing there is a model that can land St. Lucia in deep trouble.
So, Guy, let me ask the question as a layman, and I think I'm seeing some of those questions coming out on social media because we are live and people are asking the question. What do you think will happen to SLASPA eventually if both the ancillary services that you're speaking about, these are negotiated and in conjunction with SLASPA, and the primary services that you speak about, they are also with SLASPA? What do you see, or what do you think the role of SLASPA will be eventually, or what will SLASPA become? What is the need for SLASPA since you now have GPH managing all those services? Because that's what SLASPA does essentially.
So you basically taken out the two ports that have the likelihood of generating the most revenue for SLASPA, which is Port Castries and Soufrière. What are the other ports of entry that SLASPA manages? You have Rodney Bay Marina,
and
you
Vieux Fort.
have Marigot Bay, and you have Vieux Fort. Now, if as we have been saying, our information is that part of the agreement is you cannot develop Port Viewfort. Port Viewfort is almost closed down completely. They don't even have a crane down there. And look, I just saw they bought a new crane, another Blue Boy again. Just came into the port. And I know that had been sitting on a port in Italy for months, paying consultancy fees to put it together and for storage. But we are going to come to that. The board of SLASPA is going to answer in due course for that. But I'm mentioning it by way of passing because I know how long that has been sitting on a port in Italy or wherever they purchased it, or Denmark where they purchased it. You see, SLASPA now combines the revenue from Huranora Airport, George Charles Airport, and all the other ports, and everything comes into one pool and SLASPA manages. When you take out the main revenue source of Port Castries from SLASPA, immediately SLASPA finds itself with depleted revenue. Will it become like Wasco, where government now every month must put money into it, or like St. Jude Hospital? Or I mean, you have a viable entity that is revenue generating.
But now, let's just go back into SLASPA as you've made that the revenues will be depleted. But do you want to expand a little bit on what do you think is going to happen to the staffing as well? Because the stevedores, if they are employed by SLASPA, they're now being subsumed by GPH. All the other type of workers entity, even the port management part and those persons who are employed with SLASPA, do you envision them continuing to work for SLASPA, or will they now be working for GPH? So what would SLASPA need revenue for? Let me ask that question as a layman.
So
if they have no employees, no work to do, what do they need the money for?
It is difficult to answer all of the questions because we are not privy to the information. And any responsible government would have come out to the people. I think the board of SLASPA is aware of what is happening. I cannot believe that all of that would happen, and I would sit on a board and I would keep quiet. I would not ask questions. And if I'm not getting answers for questions, that I would remain on that board.
But do you think these are matters being discussed? Do you think these questions, because these are genuine questions, I'm looking at the chat as well and persons are asking that, do you think these questions are genuine questions that perhaps SLASPA employees and regular St. Lucians should be asking? And do you think that the board of SLASPA or even the government is even discussing those type of questions? Because these are fears. I mean, initially this morning when I started my program, I spoke about, are these not genuine fears that St. Lucians and employees of SLASPA and persons who are either directly or indirectly benefiting from SLASPA are asking or should be asking?
So now these are very genuine and legitimate questions. And I believe there are unions representing the stevedores. I believe there are unions representing the workers of SLASPA?
I think SLASPA workers are unionized.
I mean, they have a right to speak on this. Let's look at, now we focused a lot on Castries, but remember, Port Soufrière is part of it.
Oh, yes.
The Soufrière Development Foundation is collecting $2 from everybody who disembarks on the port in Soufrière. When the boats bring them in, the catamarans and you know the cruises that coming. What will happen to the Soufrière Development Foundation?
And that's a huge part of the community in Soufrière.
Exactly, because remember, they have taken over Port Soufrière also. What is going to happen now? Will the revenue sharing be between all for the government, or will Soufrière get a percentage of it? There are too many unanswered questions. And the basic concern that I have, and the workers of SLASPA need to speak for themselves, you know. We cannot be out there as politicians speaking to every matter that affects everybody in this country, and everybody else is keeping quiet.
So isn't that a call? That's a call to SLASPA employees and concerned persons who are either directly or indirectly going to be impacted by this deal to come out in the march and to show that you are concerned?
Let's look at the flexibility. Yes, Nancy, it is a call that I expect everybody to down their tools on that day and come out and join the march. But we wait to see. What I'm saying, let me give you an example of how when government runs an entity and when a private sector takes over, which is entirely profit driven. When Blue Boy was purchased, the crane on the port, it negated the use for a lot of the stevedores and the assistants at the port, because these cranes can hook the containers themselves. Before, you had men actually climbing with the chains and hooking the containers. But not one stevedore was sent home, as far as I know. Even if the crane, you mechanize the operation to reduce the manpower, because these people had been long-standing employees, you could not let them go because you are a government entity. When GPH takes over, now you have 2 cranes on the port. You think they have need for stevedores and people to be checking around containers and these things?
And they wouldn't, to them, what it is, it's profit driven. They do not have a vested interest in whether you remain employed or not because it's profit driven. So it would make economical and financial sense for the business model to try and cut down on the cost so that they can make more money.
So I will make a statement on Andre's station. It's not liable. I've done my research, Andre. The financials of GPH is not looking the very best.
Oh, well, I've looked at that. And we'll open the lines right after you make that statement.
Just before you open the lines. In 2003, the earnings report of GPH Holdings reported a loss of 40 cents US per share. Although an improvement from the 57 US cents per share lost in 2022. So we have seen 2 consecutive years where the shares of GPH is losing value at where it was. Now these things happen. Things fluctuate in the market. One time your shares are up there, another time it's down there. I also understood, and I know you would be aware, that GPH is looking to borrow the money from the Bank of St. Lucia from our information.
That's what's been said.
But here's who's an 11% shareholder of GPH. 2015, European Bank of Reconstruction Development, EBRD, acquired 11% ownership supporting GPH's global expansion. So if a bank in Europe has 11% shares in GPH and they acquired the 11% shares to help them in expanding. Now, I am curious because I'm still doing the research on why they acquired this 11% shares.
Could it be that they were owing?
Is it because they were owing and they could not pay? And then the bank had to take a percentage share for the money? Because why wouldn't, if they were doing so well, why would they have to come to the Bank of St. Lucia to borrow? Why wouldn't they go ahead and bring in their revenue? Because remember, when we were building the airport, we went to Taiwan, we got the money for the main terminal. And for the outfitting and the furnishing and everything, we went to the parliament to borrow 70 million from a consortium of local banks. The then opposition leader, Philip J. Pierre, stood and said we were siphoning money from the bank that should be loaned to the average St. Lucian. But here's the difference. SLASPA was borrowing the money. SLASPA is owned by St. Lucians. The shareholders of SLASPA are all the people of St. Lucia because SLASPA is a government entity. So the bank was loaning money basically to a government entity with a government guarantee because every loan that SLASPA takes is guaranteed by the government. Who is guaranteeing this loan for GPH? And what warranty or guarantee is GPH giving to the Bank of St. Lucia? And the major shareholders of the Bank of St. Lucia is government and NIC. NIC is part of government. So Look at the bouillon, Andre. So basically, we own a pot that is already generating enough money to do the development. We give it to a private entity and we loaning them the money to do it. When we can just loan ourselves the money and do it ourselves and collect all the revenue. I mean, what on another program I said is only a monkey government that will make a decision like this.
So
it
guys,
is crazy.
Let us open up the lines. I really want you to expand a little bit on that guarantee so that we understand, because that's another question persons are asking. Our numbers are...
GPH cannot give us anything for guarantee outside of St. Lucia. Can they give us a pot they have in Antigua? Can they give us what they have in Europe? When I go for a loan in the bank, they want my paper, my land paper. They want my vehicle. They want this, they want that. And when you don't pay, they come and seize these things.
That is, yes.
What is GPH giving them? Because that same bank took $100 million of ours, loaned it to a Bajan hotelier, and when the hotelier walked away, the bank wrote off the amount that was owed. That should have been my profit. That should have been my dividend on my shares in the bank. But I couldn't get it. But yet still y'all going and seize poor people's houses. Before a man don't pay his vehicle for 3 months, a little $3,000 they owe it. The bank take the vehicle and pack it in the parking lots.
Let us open up the lines now. Andre, do we have any calls? The numbers to call is the fixed line, 572-9710. And if you're calling from the diaspora on WhatsApp, the number to call is 287-0971. The numbers again, the fixed line is 572-9710. And the WhatsApp number is 287-0971. So if you have a question for Guy Joseph, and again, please be respectful in terms of your questions. We have a call? Go ahead, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning, caller. Thank you so much for calling with the opposition.
Yeah, good morning, Andre. Good morning, Mr. Joseph.
Good morning.
Okay, what I want to say, I think SLASPA, they tend to lose. I think they'll be out of service because if the workers and the services are being given over to GPH, which means we don't need them anymore. So they'll be out of it. I think the government is tend to pay redundancy to the workers and so forth. Number two, Supre, they'll be losing, the foundation will be losing a lot of money. So that's another one again, you know? So the government will be collecting that, well, GPH should be collecting all that money. So I think that deal is totally against us, and we have to stand up and put these fellas in a place, let them know we are not satisfied with what's going on, we don't have information, and not just that, the deal is just out of place, it's not good. That's my take.
Caller.
Thank you very much.
Caller,
Thank you, caller.
If I may just comment on this. There may be adjustments, and you may see things looking nice for the first 5 years, because that's what these deals do. They give you something to start off with, to make you believe that you have something good. But 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, things begin to change. If, for example, this company goes into, and we've seen their financials are not very bright, if they go into financial difficulty and they sell out, because these are publicly traded companies, so if it goes into receivership and it is sold out, who is in charge of our port? Whoever the new buyer is the one that will be controlling the port. So I've said, suppose a Chinese company buys the port Castries and Port Soufrière, and then our diplomatic relations is with Taiwan, and we do not recognize China. What kind of leverage can and we know Chinese companies are basically owned by the government of China, a lot of them. What kind of political leverage can they use being in control of your main port of entry. Because remember, during that 40 years, you can't do anything in Vieux Fort to develop Vieux Fort. You cannot control your port in Castries. That is too big of a risk for us to take for 45 million US dollars of investment. It is not worth it.
We have another call.
Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Mr. Guy and Andre.
Good morning. Good morning, caller. Thank you so much for calling Meet the Opposition. What's your question?
No problem. The thing is, I basically, it's not really a question, but to add on the investigation, Mr. Guy, you say you're doing. I myself did a little bit on GPH, because GPH currently signed an MOU with the government of British Columbia, that's in Vancouver, because they were bringing in about 44,000 passengers a year. Because you know how Canada is, it's not like a real tourist destination in the summer, right? So GPH in there, they sign a 10-year with a possible, with an option of another 10. But the agreement, if you look at this agreement, and I would love you to go and look at this agreement.
Okay.
Because my brother, it is nothing close to what we signed in St. Lucia. These guys have to meet that quota, because they said they're gonna double the amount, and then they're going to get a concession. You see? That's the difference. You cannot take what I have already and tell me that I'm paying you for it, but I already have it.
Exactly.
Why should I have a car and be paying you for the car I already own? Guys, this thing is just ludicrous. Doesn't make any sense. You understand? And I would love St. Lucians to go take a look at these guys. These guys are a company that is in the interest of their investors.
The shareholders, and I have the list of owners and directors of the company.
There is one of the banks that I know. Why they didn't take the loan from HSBC Bank? HSBC is a shareholder there. Why didn't they take the loan from HSBC Bank?
Thank you, caller. We have limited time for the call, so thank you so much for calling. We'll take another call.
No problem. Good show as usual.
Thank you. Thank you. We have another call, Andre.
Can you give the numbers again, please?
The numbers to call, the fixed line is 572-9710, and the WhatsApp is 287-0971. So that's the interesting, guy, that they would have had an agreement with Vancouver, and you look at the terms of the agreement. You were saying something about the shareholders.
But I was just saying, if you look at the agreements and the countries that they have given, they have operated in.
Right, and the tenure of those agreements.
That's the one he's talking about. Prince Rupert Cruise Port in Canada. 10 year with an option to extend for 10 years. St. Lucia, 30 years with an option of 10 years. San Juan, Puerto Rico, 30-year concession. Canary Islands, 3 different ports. They have a 20 to 40-year concession. I don't know what 20 to 40 years. It doesn't say it's 20 years with an option to renew.
But what is the difference between the concession? Because you made mention concession. What is that? What does that mean? They have a 20-year concession.
I don't know.
Okay.
The details of it would be in the agreement. There's a port they have in Italy. They have a 4-year renewable concession. So a concession, if we apply to our terms, is where you are given the opportunity to operate something. And if I'm satisfied with how well you do it, so it's almost like you're on trial for that period. I give you the right to do so. But at the end of the 4 years, I can choose not to renew. In Spain, it's a 12-year concession they have. In Denmark, they have a 20-year lease. So if you listen, which means you pay me a fixed price for using my port for that period of time. And in another one in Italy, they have a 20-year concession. What is it we have in St. Lucia? It says St. Lucia is a 30 years with 10-year extension option. But it does not say it's a concession. It does not say it's a lease. That's on GPH page, you know. That's on their website. That's not something I came up with.
We have another call. Good morning, caller. Thank you so much for calling Meet the Opposition.
Good morning, Nancy Charles. Good morning, Andre.
Good morning.
And good morning to your guest, Mr. Guy Joseph.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Very interesting discussion. I'd just like to expand. I think I'm calling from Soufrière. And on many occasions, when people talk about GPH and how it would affect Soufrière, we seem only to speak of the Soufrière Foundation. And I think that is not the complete picture. The reason for that is the port of Soufrière is a mixed-use port. In other words, a large percentage of the port in Soufrière is actually a fishing priority zone.
So the fishermen you're talking about.
So what we would like to find out is, will the traditional customs of the fishermen be restricted? Because, you know, they are able to put out their nets, those big nets where they catch their balaou and their sardines and so forth. Will that change? Because, you know, now with the development that is being proposed, the enhancement to the port, of which we have only seen some renderings, but we're not sure where these actual physical infrastructure is going to be put in place. These are questions that we have. We have questions with reference to the Soufrière Beach Park. Is GPH going to take over the management of that beach park? What about the vendors who are in there paying their fees? Are they going to bring new vendors into Soufrière? Are these going to be high-end duty-free vendors? What about the Soufrière Marine Management Authority, which is the SMMA, who also collects fees from yachts who moor their vessels against the buoys that the Soufrière Marine Management owns. So are they going to have to share their proceeds, you know, the fees that they collect with the GPH?
So, now, are you suggesting that there's been no discussion, that level of discussion with the fishermen and even the port users of Soufrière?
You know, there is something that governments tend to do, and many organizations tend to do, in that they make agreements and then they come and consult with the people after the agreement has already been made. So there was what was called a consultation, which I call a sham, with a gentleman, I think Sean Matthews, who is the consultant for GPH, along with the foundation and the community of Soufrière. But in there, very scant information was given, nothing specific. And of course, we are all aware that the parliamentary representative for Soufrière indicated that whatever the arrangement that has been made is a secret.
It's a secret, yes. I recall her saying she had a secret meeting.
Yes, so there are many concerns in Soufrière beyond that of which impacts or affects the Soufrière Foundation. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, caller.
Very much on point.
We're running out of time, guys, so we only have 2 minutes. So maybe you can wrap up in terms of in terms of GPH, and maybe just give a brief call to St. Lucians in terms of the march on the 30th of November.
Well, I expect all persons in Soufrière, where the port is going to be developed, I expect, and I am very clear, we don't know everything that is going on. But what I know is based on what GPH is presenting, we can do it better than GPH with SLASPA. SLASPA is better and more beneficial to St. Lucia than GPH is. And that is why we are calling on all St. Lucians. You don't have to be a supporter of the United Workers' Party. You don't have to vote for UWP in the next election. But you need to take a stand for your country, for what is happening, for the threat to democracy. Because if UWP has the wrong leader and they end up in government, can they behave like Philip J. Pierre is doing under Speaker of the House? So this is not a partisan approach. There's a threat to our democracy, there's a threat to our livelihood, there's the giving away of our ports, and maybe the airport will be done the same thing, because what they are considering for the airport is a PPP arrangement, while the UWP government was considering that SLASPA had the capacity to develop HIA and to manage it as they have done. So it's a call, whether you are young. I believe I expect to see more young people, because as I indicated, we need to send a message to the government that we are not satisfied, that we are kept in the dark on matters that will have long-term implications. And if all of that revenue is given up, it means the only place the government can come back to collect the revenue is to continue to tax the people.
Young people. Okay.
If you take away the $1.50 from solid waste, will you put a garbage tax on the people of St. Lucia? Or will you say you cannot pick up our garbage anymore? So these are real questions. And I think the demonstration, the march, is to say to the government, we need answers. It's not a march to overthrow the government. It's not a coup. It is a message that we need to send to the government. The price of gas is too high. The price of food in the supermarkets, they are too high. The 2.5 is impacting us negatively. We want it removed. And all of the things happening in the parliament, our healthcare system, and our road conditions, we are not happy. And we are asking all St. Lucians to come and make their voices be heard by being present.
There you have it. Thank you so much, Guy Joseph, who's the Deputy Political Leader of the United Workers' Party. And thank you so much to our callers. We had quite a few callers and viewers on our Facebook Live, and a lot of comments in the chat room in terms of the information given it. So St. Lucia, let me say thank you so much again for meeting us today on Meet the Opposition on Rev-Up St. Lucia 97.1 FM, and an invitation to you. We're saying it's not a coup. We don't want to overthrow the government, but we want to send a strong message to the St. Lucia government to see we are feeling the squeeze. And so if you feel in the squeeze, if you're not happy with the way this country is going, if you're unemployed, if you think that there's certain things that the government can do and should do, I'm asking you to turn up on the 30th of November, that is next week, Thursday, to march and to send a message to the St. Lucia Labour Party and to the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Thank you once again. Thank you, Andre. And we had a wonderful time. I'll see you again next week. Next week is match day, but I will be there in the morning to give a last-minute clarion call, and hopefully we'll have a special guest as well next week. So see you on Rev-Up 97.1 FM next week, Thursday, on Meet the Opposition. Over to you, Andre.
Thank you very much, Nancy Charles and Guy Joseph. Thank you.